the car for our audience. They're dying to know what it looks like, and we'll put a picture of it on our website too, because it looks amazing.
So imagine Mad Max meets Japanese Blade Runner, neon lights, tuner cars, all that sort of good stuff, and then in a gritty dystopian wasteland. That's sort of the look I've gone for.
It's kind of like a cool Porsche, right? A futuristic Porsche.
Yeah. I get a lot of people, they don't believe it's an MX-5 when they see it, because there's no original panels left.
No.
So, needless to say, that day when you get that Hot Wheels in that little packet with the plastic window, you're set. It's a day you will always remember.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, I did not see this coming. I mean, I was up against so many awesome competitors, and I'm like, yeah, I'll be happy with fourth for an honourable mention. That'd be nice. Mm. And then I was watching the live stream, and then they sort of skipped over my car when they were judging it, and they're like, okay, well, that was it. And then they get to announcing the winner, and it's me. I'm like, oh, they've read the wrong name out. That's embarrassing.
Chris, it's just amazing. Good on you. It looks incredible. Welcome. Well, good to have you on. That's us. Went too fast. You've been fantastic, both of you. Nwanthe Samaro-Cohen, Jack Yan. Great show. Thanks to my producer, Ayana. I am back tomorrow, 3:45, when the horns hit. Lisa Owen and Checkpoint next. Kiss.
Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on ANZ National. I'm Susana Leatawa. E haere aki nei, coming up, the jagged edges on tax dragging out the coalition talks. What might Christopher Luxon have to change in his plans? The country's biggest bank posts a big $2 billion profit. The CEO is with us live. Christmas comes early for the Coromandel. Its vital state highway is set to open ahead of time and under budget. Travelling the Blue Highway to Waiheke with the new operator, why locals are happy to see some competition. Fancy a life less ordinary? Well, we'll tell you what an $81 raffle ticket could win you. And the Christchurch School taking a novel approach to get kids to class. You can watch us live on the RNZ website, Facebook and Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Ahi Marie, good afternoon. I'm Evie Ashton. The ACT Party leader says talks to form the next government are going positively, but suggests there is still a lot of work to be done. Substantive negotiations have entered their second week, with National, ACT and New Zealand First still working towards a deal. David Seymour says the new government could be formed this week.
Everybody says we want it to happen quickly, but also everybody's involved with two other parties, and of course no one person's in a position to determine what the end point is or exactly when it happens, because that relies on interactions with two others from each of the three's point of view.
David Seymour says he has now met with New Zealand First leader Winston Peters 4 times since the election. Meanwhile, a former National Party Treaty Negotiations Minister is describing a potential treaty referendum as a bit of a disaster. The ACT Party campaigned on the policy, which would see the treaty principles rewritten, legislated and ratified by the public. National leader Christopher Luxon has stopped short of ruling out a referendum, but describes it as divisive and unhelpful. Chris Finlayson, who was Treaty Negotiations Minister between 2008 and 2017, says a referendum will cause unnecessary division and divert from the task at hand. An Australian police officer has told a coroner he wasn't briefed before entering the Linwood Mosque on March the 15th, 2019. The inquest into the mosque attacks is continuing in Christchurch in front of the Deputy Chief Coroner, Bridget Windley. The officer, who can't be named, is giving evidence via audio-visual link and told the inquest he did not believe the mosque was safe and was unaware it had been cleared. Ms Windley asked whether a briefing should have been held.
You're entering into what is an armed offender area, an active armed offender on your understanding, and you've had no briefing?
Yes.
You've had no briefing, but do you agree with me that best operational practice would have made that a useful, in fact, highly desirable exercise?
Yes, it would have been.
The officer told the coroner he believed travelling to the scene in the St John Specialised Emergency Vehicle with paramedics held him back from getting into the mosque. Inter-Islander expects sailings of its Cook Strait ferry, Kaiarahi, will be cancelled for up to a week while it's being repaired. A large hole was ripped in the hull of the ferry as it berthed in Wellington last night. The company says passengers will be offered an alternative sailing and more trips of other ferries have been added to the schedule. Last Wednesday morning, a Bluebridge ferry, the Connemara, hit a wharf leaving Wellington. A small hole was repaired and the ferry was back sailing that evening. The country's biggest bank, ANZ, says the percentage of customers 90 days behind on their loan repayments remains low at 0.6%, despite steady increases. The ANZ recorded a profit of $2.13 billion in the year to September, down 7% on last year. The chief executive says its performance was slower in the second half of the year due to tougher economic conditions. The bank has also set aside an additional $144 million for potential bad debts. The Thames Coromandel District Mayor says a crucial road reopening in time for the summer holidays is a great Christmas present for the region. State Highway 25A between Kopu and Hikuwai is set to open 5 days before Christmas after being damaged in January when a bridge was washed out in storms. Mayor Len Salt says the bridge reopening will make a huge difference for those needing to travel across the peninsula.
The challenges that they've faced with that section of the road closed have been enormous. It's meant longer travel times. It's put a lot of extra pressure on the rest of the roading network from heavy traffic, heavy vehicles.
Len Salt hopes the reopened road will bring back visitors to the region for summer. In sport, New Zealand golfer Stephen Alker says he never dreamt of becoming a major force on the US Seniors Tour, having now chalked up a 7th championship win. Alker's won the tour's final event of the year, the Charles Schwab Cup Championship event in Arizona, by one shot. The victory earns him almost $2 million.
Another multiple win season. To get second after going first last year, I think that it means a lot just to keep the consistency and get a couple of wins. It's nice, but the guys are just getting better out here and just pushing harder. So you just got to try and get a little bit better every year.
The Warriors will play 10 home games in next year's NRL competition, 4 of them in the opening 6 rounds of the competition. They kick off their season at Mount Smart Stadium against Cronulla on March 8th and will play their 3rd round match against Canberra in Christchurch. Game 2 has the Warriors away to Melbourne, meaning they face 4 of the top 8 teams in the first 4 weeks of the season. The NRL season kicks off in Las Vegas on March 3rd with a double header between Manly and South Sydney and the Sydney Roosters against Brisbane. And Novak Djokovic has ended the year with the men's #1 tennis ranking for a record-extending 8th time. That's the news.
Hospitals in Gaza are targeted.
The situation is worsening. There are tens of thousands of civilians seeking shelter.
While Iceland declares a state of emergency.
There is essentially a corridor, a tunnel, if you will, of magma, about 15 kilometres long.
And the Alpine Skiing World Cup winner leaves her trophy in Finland.
Michaela Schifrin, she's just earned her 89th career World Cup win. And
she got a lovely big trophy, did she?
Yeah, she got a reindeer. So hard to fit in the overhead locker.
International coverage. Morning Report weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint next with Susana Leataua. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Mainly fine today with a few cloudy areas in the west and the odd afternoon shower in Northland. Cloud increasing tomorrow with isolated showers turning to rain for a time in the afternoon or evening. Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine, high cloud increasing tomorrow. Whanganui and from Taihape to Wellington. Partly cloudy, a few showers tomorrow afternoon or evening. Nelson and Marlborough mainly fine today, scattered rain tomorrow, clearing in the evening. Buller to Fiordland, cloudy with periods of rain, heavy at times. For Canterbury, fine with high cloud. Otago and Southland, occasional rain or showers today, with possible thunderstorms about eastern Otago, clearing overnight and fine spells at first tomorrow, but rain spreading north in the afternoon and evening. And for Rekohu, Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. The time is 7 minutes past 5. I'll have traffic news and headlines for you at about 20 past 5.
Kia ora, Evie. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai ki checkpoint I tēnei rā. With government talks into their second week, National's tax relief package is proving to be a major sticking point. New Zealand First flatly objects to National's plan to fund the tax cuts by allowing foreigners to buy homes worth more than $2 million, as long as they pay a 15% tax. The delay means the chance of Christopher Luxon making APEC is increasingly remote. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
Waiting for Winston Peters, the weekly Wellington Airport ritual. You never know who you might bump into.
Shouldn't you be waiting for Winston? I'm just a washed-up politician waiting to board a plane to Rotorua.
Far from washed up, the former National MP Christopher Luxon is never short of a considered opinion. And the former Treaty Negotiations Minister is frank when asked for his thoughts on ACT's calls for a treaty referendum.
It would be a bit of a disaster, really, and I like David Seymour, and I've told him so. It'd just bring all the nutcases out of the woodwork, and it would cause unnecessary division and divert people from the task at hand.
The referendum is just one of the sticking points between the three parties negotiating a government. The discussions are at a crunchy point, past the areas of consensus, and now knee-deep in disagreement.
I wouldn't want to say that it's in the bag, but I also wouldn't want to say that it's not going to happen. That's part of the respect for the confidentiality of negotiations we're having with the other parties.
I'm pleased with the progress in the direction of travel, but we do now need to get things closed out, and that's why this week's so important.
An even bigger headache for the incoming Prime Minister, Christopher Luxon, will be delivering his promised tax relief package. National wants to pay for it by allowing foreign buyers back into the housing market and taxing them for the privilege. But New Zealand First is fundamentally opposed, a major obstacle, meaning National may need to get creative.
I'm not prepared to discuss anything that is discussed in that room amongst those leaders because we're acting in good faith and with goodwill with each other, and that's where that needs to take place.
What it does mean is that Mr Luxon's likelihood of making the APEC Leaders Summit in San Francisco later this week is becoming slimmer by the day. Labour's caretaker government is working on alternative arrangements in case a deal's not done by Wednesday evening, and it needs to send a representative instead.
So it would be nice to go, but the must-do is actually forming a strong and stable government. That is really my job.
There is an element of needing to do one before the other, and I guess it's unfortunate that APEC falls in such a particular point in New Zealand's political cycle.
The director of Victoria University's Centre for Strategic Studies, David Cappy, says missing the trip would be a shame for Mr Luxon and for the country.
It really is an opportunity for a new Prime Minister to sit down and talk to counterparts about the issues that leaders are really concerned about. And those are about trade and economics, that's for sure, those are vitally important, but it's also about the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, regional security issues. Whoever goes, it's really important that they can provide a New Zealand perspective and talk about New Zealand's interests on those issues as well.
In the meantime, talks continue in both Wellington and Auckland. In a curious dynamic, the foes turned friends, David Seymour and Winston Peters, have now met face-to-face some 4 times. But all three leaders have yet to get in a room together all at once.
It'll take as long as it takes. We'll do it right, but we do need to make good progress through the course of this week.
The task involves quite a lot of consulting, referring, going away, sharpening up the deal and then cross-checking it with 2 other parties, which is the case for all 3 of us. So you put all that together and there is quite a lot to do.
A lot to do while the country waits. For that matter, we're still waiting for Winston Peters.
The country's biggest bank has recorded a $2.13 billion profit and is warning of some tough times ahead. ANZ's full-year profit is down 7%, and a result the CEO describes as a game of 2 halves. Antonia Watson says the bank had a tougher second half of the year because of the more difficult environment the country is entering. ANZ New Zealand CEO Antonia Watson joins us now. Tēnā koe, Antonia.
Tēnā koe, Susanna.
What do you think of this result?
Well, I think a game of two halves is a good description. It's a good, strong, solid result. I think it's important that we are entering a period of economic uncertainty well placed to be able to help our customers. But we've definitely seen that sort of COVID stimulus and the impact of the rapidly rising rate environment, which helped us in the first half. We've definitely seen that waning away as competition for home loans has become even fiercer, as there's been less of them in the market, as people choose to put more money on term deposit, which is obviously a more expensive form of funding for us because you can get really good rates on term deposit now. So it's just, we're putting aside more money for future bad and doubtful debts, just as a reflection of where we see the economy heading.
So why do you think you had a dip in profits?
Well, there's actually two measures of profit we use. One is our cash profit, which takes out the impact of derivative, sort of accounting treatment of derivatives where the gains and losses reverse over time. So we actually had an increase in our cash profit. The decrease was in our statutory profit, and that was the impact of those derivative gains and losses that are really a timing difference. So we just take out that noise to get the real underlying profit that's more of a reflection of our ongoing business.
What kind of stress are you expecting customers will experience over the next year or two?
I'm going to say that depends. Right now, in general, customers are in reasonably good shape. Certainly there are some that we're working with. They number in the hundreds, certainly nowhere near the thousands. But overall people have been saving. They've been not reducing their payments when interest rates came down, so they haven't had to increase them so much as they went up. They've had pay rises. They've really been shoring up their personal balance sheets. I think as we look out to the future, the two big risks are a significant increase in unemployment and or another round of interest rate hikes. So I think the uncertainty at the moment is we're in that sort of watch, worry and wait situation with that the Reserve Bank talks about, and we just need to hope that there's been enough pain seen in the economy or is flowing through the economy at the moment so that inflation is really, we've put a lid on inflation. That's the really important thing here.
So how do you explain your $2 billion profit to customers really struggling under the weight of mortgage payments at the moment?
Oh, look, it's a really hard one, Susanna, because I acknowledge that it's a really large dollar number. I mean, over $2 billion is a big number. It's not huge in a global sense, but it's definitely large in a New Zealand sense. But it's a measure of profit as opposed to profitability, and profitability is a measure that allows us to compare ourselves with other banks and other companies. It's our return on equity. So our shareholders have invested $17 billion in New Zealand, and they need to get enough of a return on that they'll keep their money invested so that we can lend it out to our customers. And our return on equity is about 13%, which is based on some work KPMG did earlier this year. It's about middle of the road for the NZX, and based on some work that we had an independent economic consultant do as part of our response to the market study, it's about middle of the road compared to like banks around the world. So we're pretty comfortable that we make a fair profit. It's enough to make our shareholders continue to invest in New Zealand, but it's not excessive.
Let's look at inflation a little bit closer. How do you assess where New Zealand is at with inflation and the Reserve Bank's mission to get it back to the 1 to 3% target?
Gosh, I wish I could answer that question. We've definitely seen it come off the highs, and that's really positive. The question is, has the economy seen enough pain yet to have put the damper on it for good? And I guess there's one positive piece of news on that we've just seen, which is in our October credit card spend. We've seen spend remain sort of elevated for quite some time. In October, we saw it down about 3% year on year. So that's the first real move we've seen. Usually we see it increase leading up to Christmas, and we just haven't seen that. So hopefully that's a sense that, people are tightening their belts, they're not spending as much, and therefore that's all part of helping get rid of that inflation beast.
Antonia Watson, thank you very much. That's Antonia Watson, CEO of ANZ New Zealand. It's 16 and a half minutes past 5. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's finished 3 months early and under budget, a huge sigh of relief for Coromandel residents and businesses with the announcement today State Highway 25A will be open in time for Christmas. It means the two sides of the Coromandel Peninsula will be reconnected again. The highway has been closed since January after a massive slip affecting families, businesses, schools and tourism to the region. Joining us now is Joe Wilton from Waiheke. Kia ora, Joe.
Kia ora.
Ahead of time and under budget. Since when does that happen?
Oh, it does actually happen. But for this particular project, we are so stoked to be able to advise the public of it, because that biggest driver for this project was to get it as open as quickly and obviously as safely as we could.
It's great news for the region. So how were you able to get it done so far ahead of time?
A lot of planning and a lot of very, very hard work and some incredible hours worked by the team. So it's things like working 24/7 at the East Bridge factory, building those beams so that they didn't hold us up on site. It's working 7 days a week to get the piling done and 7 days a week to get those deck panels in so that you can actually walk along it at the moment and get from one side to the other. Can't put a car on it, but you can walk along it.
And why did you take such a different approach to get this project done?
Because the most important thing for this project was to get it open as quickly as possible, and that meant sort of looking at our construction timeframes and going, how do we speed this up? What's the most critical thing that we need to get done? And that was basically building as much as we could at the same time off-site, so that when we brought it to site, it was like a giant Meccano set, and literally you're just assembling it.
How much people power did it take?
Oh, so there's about 70 to 100 people on site at any one time, and off site there'd probably be about that much as well, working in the various factories that have helped to produce all the pieces.
So it's come in under budget. By how much, and how were you able to do that?
So it's come under budget. The estimated budget was sort of under 50 million, and we're estimating it's going to cost 43 million by the time we finish. How we've managed to do it is literally looking at what we can fabricate, and it's actually the time, because it's taken us less time than what we envisaged. That saves us. That's what's brought it under budget.
So when will it open exactly?
We will have it open to two-way traffic by the 20th of December. It won't necessarily be complete, and by that I mean there'll be still planting to do in the new year, but the road won't close for us to do that work. So it will be open to two-way traffic come the 20th of December.
And you're sure this will actually happen?
Yes.
And nothing's going to close it again?
Nothing's going to close it again at that particular point. We've done a hell of a lot of work. Oops, I probably shouldn't have put it that way, should I? We've done a lot of work on the rest of the corridor to increase the resilience as well. So we've put 11 culverts on the eastern side have been upgraded in size. I think there's about 13 on the western side that have been upgraded as well. So we've looked at the whole corridor and gone, what do we need to fix to try and keep this corridor open as when we get another big storm.
It's great news. Thanks so much. That's Joe Wilton from Waiheke, opening sooner than expected and under budget. Are you affected by the opening of State Highway 25A? Let us know how this will change your daily life. It's 20 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora e te iwi, ho mai o whakaaro. Don't forget you can text us 2101 and you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us Checkpoint, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Anei a iwi me ngā pito pito kōrero.
With government talks now into their second week, National's plan to fund tax cuts with a tax on expensive house purchases by foreigners is proving to be a major sticking point. New Zealand First voted for the foreign buyers ban while in coalition with Labour and is flatly opposed to partially rolling it back. An Australian police officer has told the inquest into the 2019 mosque attacks that he wasn't briefed before arriving at Linwood Mosque. The officer was in Christchurch for a sniper training course at the time. He told the coroner today via video link that when he arrived at the mosque, he was unaware the building had already been cleared. The World Health Organization says the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza City, where thousands of people are reportedly trapped, has ceased to function. It says constant fighting and bombing has all but knocked out the hospital's power, significantly increasing deaths. Hamas denies it has bunkers underneath the building. 7 teenagers have been arrested after an aggravated robbery in Pukekohe in South Auckland. Police say 6 masked armed offenders stole a number of items, including cigarettes, from a business on West Street this morning. The police have recovered most of the items as well as a stolen vehicle. And a Waiheke local says the launch today of a new ferry service, Island Direct, is a game changer. The 50-seater vessel will complete 18 crossings between Auckland and Waiheke most days, with some tickets at nearly half the price of the long-running operator Fuller's 360. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, let's start in Auckland on the Southern Motorway near Mount Wellington. Due to a breakdown on State Highway 1, the left lane heading north is blocked before Panama Road overbridge. Further south, State Highway 1 is now closed north of Tūrangi near the intersection with Korohe Road following a truck that has rolled there. And in the South Island on State Highway 94, Riversdale in Southland, a crash has now closed State Highway 94 at Riversdale near the intersection with Essex Street. Our next traffic news and headlines are at about 20 to 6.
Ngā mihi, Evie. New Zealand golfer Stephen Alker has ended his season in fruitful fashion, winning the Charles Schwab Cup today, earning him almost $2 million. It was a nervy finish for the 52-year-old who held a 4-shot lead heading into the final round, but the chasers were hot on his heels. With me is sports reporter Jonty Dine. Kia ora, Jonty. So a bit of a dramatic end to the season.
Kia ora, Susanna. Yes, it certainly was. So the pressure was well and truly on Alker. As you mentioned, the pack were closing in. His 4-stroke lead had whittled down to just 1 over the final few holes, and it was Ernie Els and Stephen Ames who were storming home. They would finish 17 under, meaning Alker had to par the final hole to avoid a playoff. His last drive wasn't great, as he almost went into the water, but he recovered with an up and down before he sunk a short putt to make par and take the win. So as the tour's final event of the year, Alker pockets $1.7 million, so that's made up from today's winnings and a bonus for finishing second on the overall season standings, only behind American Steve Stricker. Now, despite the win, Alker admit his swing wasn't quite there today, and though he made it exciting, that certainly wasn't the plan. Now, it hasn't been the easiest of years for Alker. He actually lost his caddy back in February, so it was Sam Workman that caddied for Alker for 4 years and passed away after a battle with liver cancer. So after the win, Alker was pretty emotional as he paid tribute to his late friend.
To beat these guys and beat this company, and as I said, it's hard to win out here, and so to get another one, I've been stuck on 6 for a while, but to get another one is great. But it means a lot, obviously we're with the family and friends here, and Troy, after Sam passed, he's been a stud, and I'm glad I got a flag from him today. That was huge.
So you can certainly hear the emotion there in Alker's voice. Caddy meant a lot to him. Now, the win is Alker's second of the season after he took out the Insperity Invitational back in May. So he ends up with $5.2 million in prize money for 2023. So not a bad year's work.
It's lovely. And we're already looking towards next season of the NRL.
We are, yeah. It seems that we just finished the season, but yes, the 2024 draw, it's been released. And some big news for Warriors fans is the Anzac the Anzac Day match is being played in Auckland and not Melbourne. So this is a weekend which attracts plenty of attention with traditional fixtures, and the Warriors and Stormers, of course, among them. But next year it'll be the Gold Coast Titans coming to Mount Smart to mark the Anzac commemorations. Now, the Warriors will kick off their season against the Sharks at Mount Smart on March 8th. They will get an early test in round 2 against the Storm, and on March 22 they will travel down to Christchurch for a home game against the Canberra Raiders. So that's the first time in 4 years that they will play in Christchurch, so fans will be very happy to see them, I'm sure. Now, the Warriors have a total of 10 games against the Sharks, Knights, Eagles, Dolphins, Storm, Broncos, Tigers, Eagles, Bulldogs, and of course the Raiders, and they will also have a bye in the final game of the regular season, so that could be absolute gold should they again make the playoffs. Another quirk of this season is round one will actually kick off in Las Vegas with the Seagulls and Rabbitohs and Roosters Broncos doubleheader. So definitely expect a big party that weekend.
Wow, very flash. Thanks so much, Jonty. Jonty Dine, RNZ's sports reporter. Returning to our earlier story now about National's tax plan and the government negotiations. The incoming Prime Minister Christopher Luxon remains committed to delivering the tax cuts he campaigned on, but the policy appears to be a sticking point in negotiations. A key prong of the funding model is allowing foreign buyers to purchase homes over $2 million and pay a 15% tax. Joining me now is Infometrics principal economist Brad Olsen. Kia ora, Brad.
Kia ora.
If the foreign buyers tax is a sticking point in negotiations, what do you think National will do?
Well, you're right. I mean, it is tricky. There aren't as many opportunities going forward to fund this. The likes of the foreign buyers tax is around $700 million plus going forward. So that is going to be a challenge to fund. I think the most likely two options are you have to keep going with this tax cut. I mean, Christopher Luxon's made it very clear that is effectively his bottom line. To be fair, New Zealand First also wants something like this. In their manifesto, they'd pushed it out a little bit in terms of how quickly it was going to come through, but they want it too. I think most likely the two areas you could see are likely either a phasing in of this these tax changes. So the foreign buyers tax would go, but maybe instead of coming in immediately, the indexation of tax thresholds might take a little bit longer, or you might see a cutback, a further deeper cutback in the likes of the public sector funding to instead fund that tax relief.
Which areas of the public sector do you think could be in line to be cut?
I suspect at the level that we're talking about, it would have to be a bit more across the board. The National Party, in its tax plan that it released during the election, was already looking for over $2 billion worth of savings each and every year from the public sector, around sort of $600 million from additional savings in bureaucracy, so, you know, that some of those back office changes, $600 million from the climate dividend, $500 million from some of the Labor Party's current programs, and $400 million from contractor savings. Now, you'd have to bring in an additional $700 million a year plus if you got rid of something like the foreign buyers tax. So, you know, that's a larger line item in 1 year than any of the other combined. I think that would mean more broad or more across the board declines in spending and a greater level of prioritisation.
Do you think that we'll see job losses by Christmas?
The timing on the job losses and the question around that, I'm not 100% sure, only because, again, there's a legal process that has to be gone through there. There's quite an intricate process, I expect, as well, for the heads of public departments to decide and understand where they're able to make some of those savings. Importantly there, it'll be critical for the incoming government to be clear over what it wants to achieve with the public sector, because otherwise I think you're going to have a lot of those public sector leaders who are needing to make cuts and needing to make tough decisions around staffing levels without knowing exactly what areas are going to require staffing. So there's a little bit of a two-play there going through. You'll need to have an idea of what still needs to be resourced and what areas are not seen to be as key in focus. Those are the areas that I think are more likely to come in for the cuts that are being envisaged.
Are there any specific government programs the government will get rid of to pay for its tax policy?
I mean, there are some areas that are already signalled. I mean, again, all of the fiscal plans and, expectations from all of the parties of the likely incoming government, sort of none of these plans avoid first contact with reality. They're always good on paper, but you're never sure exactly what comes out of coalition negotiations. But some of them, the likes of the clean car discount, that's been a policy that has been very clearly by most of the parties in the firing line, but also an area where that clean car discount was paying out a lot more in terms of the rebate than it was actually earning in from the fee. So it was costing supporting the government. That's an area I think you'll see a pullback from. But there are other areas of contention, the likes of the workforce development councils. That New Zealand First was part of the organisation and the government that brought those in to ensure better industry collaboration. Both National and ACT in their policies have decided or have claimed that they want to get rid of them. So I think there's, again, a few more difficult things. Shane Jones has been quoted this afternoon of talking about some of the jagged edges. I'd add those sort of conversations into the mix.
Just to finish, Brad, do you think there's any other way you can think of that the government could pay for its tax cuts, maybe increasing corporate tax rates?
Some people have floated those ideas around, other revenue options. I expect that, firstly, they're probably being canvassed by the political parties. Given that there are already declines in some of those areas, you look at corporate tax, for example, and although we've certainly seen some big corporate profits being made by a few of the banks in recent days, actual corporate profits overall are now over 10% lower than they were a year ago. So you risk possibly not getting quite as much revenue as you might have originally expected. The other challenge is that, of course, none of the parties went to the electorate with that in mind. None of them said to voters, look, if you want us to come in and you want our policies, we'll be doing this, raising corporate tax or anything else. So I don't see that to be an immediate starter. I suspect, given the position of all of the political parties, the likely options will be, again, around the likes of savings from government spending. But I wouldn't discount the idea that some of these changes might well be pushed out. It's clear that there are limited fiscal options, and possibly a more prudent way to do this would, instead of being introducing some of that tax relief immediately, there might have to be a bit more staggering that goes on.
Thank you, Brad Olsen, Principal Economist with Infometrics. It's 27 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Time for the business news. Ko taku hoa I naenei ko Nona Peltier. The services sector's activity continues to contract. What is the latest, Nona?
Well, we had the performance of manufacturing on Friday, and that was deeply in contraction, kind of a worrying signal there. So today we had the performance of services index. It's a complementary one. We've got manufacturing representing goods, and the performance of services, sort of industries like accommodation and hospitality, property, that kind of thing. Okay, so we were in contraction in June, July, August, a little bit into expansion in September, but back into contraction again for October. Together with the PMI, that's the Performance of Manufacturing Index, that's not a good sign for the economy. We're looking at a situation where some of the parts of the services sector are doing pretty good. Let's say accommodation is doing pretty well, cafes and restaurants, transport and storage. Retail trade, though it's improved, is still in contraction. And really, one of the big drags was business, which was property and business. It was down 4 to 45. The 50 is the marker, so 45 is quite low. So, if these numbers are a reflection of what we've seen coming through the third quarter, it does suggest that the economy is maybe slowed down. It's one thing that the economists are going to be looking closely at, because these numbers are what's happening, not what's happened as such. They're the more active numbers that we actually have to look at how the economy is tracking. And that's why they're important. So overall, we were at 48.9, just under that 50 mark. Still, though, contraction's not a good sign. Not at all.
Okay, let's go to hydro generation volumes.
Right.
Increased. They've increased, and that's helped to boost the profits of Manawa Energy. What did it make?
Well, it was an interesting one. So their underlying profit, otherwise known as EBITDA, which is not what we're going to get into, underlying profit was up 11%. Okay, but the bottom line, which is the number that really matters when we report profits, the net profit was down more than 80%. And that's because the year earlier they sold the retail arm of their business, which was formerly known as Trust Power. Yeah, that's right. And so they sold it to Mercury and they made $342 million. That really boosted their year earlier. And I guess the market is hoping that they were going to be a bit more optimistic about the outlook. They're going to invest for growth and so on, very upbeat. But really, they didn't change their guidance for the year ahead. And I guess that's what the market wants to see. They want to see these companies become more profitable, especially when they have a lot of money and big plans. So their share price dropped 2% today. The top 50 index, 0.4% drop today, a 47 points lost there to 11,093. Part of the reason there is it's hard to explain because really overall the Asian markets are a little bit more buoyant. For whatever reason, we're not. It happens sometimes. You know, it's the Monday blahs, perhaps. In any case...
exchange rate.
Yeah, I was just going to get to that.
Thank you.
Now, the dollar's been steady, pretty much. That's because there's mixed signals coming out of the United States still on where it's interest rates heading. Is it inflation still up? We don't know. There was a downgrade, though, from Moody's looking at the United States market. They moved their credit outlook to negative from stable. That sort of made people take a bit of a pause. Bit of a confusing day in the market in any case. 58.9 US cents, 92.6 Australian, and 48.2 British pence. There you go.
Thank you, Nona. Aucklanders hopping to and from Waiheke Island are celebrating a new competitor offering trips on the route, with Island Direct setting sail for the first time today. Its 50-seater vessel is scheduled to complete 18 crossings between Auckland CBD and Waiheke most days, and some of its tickets are going for nearly half the price of the long-running ferry operator Fuller's 360. Reporter Louise Tanuth and camera operator Marika Habazi were up early to catch the very first Island Direct ferry.
Very exciting. Good to be part of the Hauraki Gulf maritime history with the new ferry running between downtown and Waiheke.
Skipper Jack Lucas at the wheel for the maiden voyage of Island Direct's ferry, which departed Auckland City at a crisp 6 o'clock this morning. Owner David Todd is thrilled the day has finally arrived.
It's just amazing to be finally on the water with the boat, and it's been 7, 8, 9 months of hard work to bring this to fruition.
Up until now, Fuller's 360 has been the only ferry service going between Auckland City and Waiheke. It follows an outcry from Waiheke commuters about a 19% price increase in July, on top of regular cancellations and delays. However, on Friday, Waka Kotahi released a report clearing Fuller's 360 of charging excessive fares.
People are demanding a cheaper service, yeah, for sure.
It's overdue, and competition, look at Air New Zealand and Jetstar. You know, when there's competition, the patrons benefit. And so let's see what happens.
Any competition would be great, yeah, especially with Fuller's, cancelling a lot and being late, so should be good.
They need to be reliable as well. This getting to the wharf and finding the ferries that cancelled it, especially when you've got appointments. A lot of locals end up getting a ferry before the one they need to get to make sure that they're
Island Direct will provide 18 crossings a day on its 50-seater vessel, except Tuesdays when there will be 12. The company is promising cheaper fares, with a pre-booked return trip to Waiheke going for $50 and one-way $27.50. That's $5 and $2 less than Fuller's respectively. Also, Fuller's currently charges $95 to pre-book for a specific sailing. Island Direct doesn't charge extra to pre-book. To accommodate for busy sailings and to avoid missing a ferry because it's too full, Island Direct is offering passengers the opportunity to book their ferry in advance, but walk-up tickets are also available. Locals Isla and Jeremy live and work on Waiheke. Today they're on board the 6:45am service, heading into the city for an appointment. The biggest benefit to them is being able to book their ferry in advance.
There was a bit of debacle in summer with the ferries overfilling and then leaving people behind having to wait. So this is just, it's amazing that there's another option.
A couple of times we've gone to go to appointments and not made it onto the ferry, even having a residence lane card. Still just too busy to get on.
Others agree being able to pre-book a service is a game changer.
The ferry sailing suited our timetable, and we just wanted to support the new guys.
Especially to beat the crowds during peak times, which are a huge problem.
People lined up like cattle, waiting. Used to be a time where you could just walk on the ferry 15 minutes before, sit down, relax. Now they line you up like it's somewhat weird version of a deranged Disneyland.
Despite a slow start to the morning with just a few passengers on the first few sailings, Island Direct owner David Todd is optimistic things will pick up.
Look, the early sailings are really, trialling our systems, but great to have some customers on board, and we'll go from here.
Multi-passes will soon be available for the Island Direct ferry service, and passengers will be able to use the 80 Hop or Gold card on board. Fuller's 360 has previously told Checkpoint it welcomes the new competitor and says there's enough demand for both operators.
And you can check out the visuals online from Louise and Marika. Great day today in Auckland for the ferry. Were you or are you on the Island Direct? We'd love to hear from you. Text 2101. It is, 18 minutes to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora e te iwi, ho mai o whakaaro. Don't forget you can text us on 2101 and you can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, Facebook us Checkpoint or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Anei a iwi me ngā pito kōrero.
Kia ora. National's plan to fund tax cuts with a tax on expensive house purchases by foreigners is proving to be a major sticking point in talks with ACT and New Zealand First over forming the next government. New Zealand First voted for the foreign buyers ban while in coalition with Labour and is flatly opposed to partially rolling it back. Economic conditions. The head of the country's biggest bank, ANZ, says its net profit of just over $2 billion is a fair one. Antonia Watson told Checkpoint it has contacted 290,000 customers who are at most risk of financial stress, but only 0.6% of customers are more than 90 days behind on their repayments. She says that number is manageable. A 30-year-old man has appeared in Auckland District Court after a 9-year-old child was hit over the head with a shovel at the end of a pro-Palestinian rally yesterday. Police say the man is under mental health supervision and the young victim remains in a stable condition in Starship Hospital. And the Thames Coromandel District Mayor says a crucial road link reopening next month is a great Christmas present for the region. Part of State Highway 25A between Kopu and Hikuwai was washed out in storms in January. Wakakotahi says it's pulled out all stops to complete a 124-metre bridge spanning the chasm 3 months ahead of schedule. Len Salt says the bridge will make a huge difference for people living across the peninsula and he hopes it will bring visitors back for summer. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic. In Auckland's southern motorway, that breakdown on State Highway 1 in the left lane heading north before Panama Road overbridge has been cleared. Expect delays as traffic flows normalise. In the central North Island, a truck has rolled on State Highway 1 just north of Tūrangi and the road has now closed near the intersection with Korohe Road. And in the South Island, a crash has now closed State Highway 94 at Riversdale in Southland near the intersection with Essex Street. Our next news and weather is at 6 o'clock.
Kia ora, Evie. Kiwi shoppers will now have the power to help critically endangered wildlife, including orangutans, and help protect rapidly disappearing rainforests. A free smartphone app called Palm Oil Scan has today been launched in New Zealand and Australia, which gives consumers the ability to check out a company's use of palm oil and whether its supplies are sustainable. Auckland Zoo has been closely involved in the app's development, and Deputy Curator of Mammals, Amy Robbins, says it is as simple as scanning barcodes.
All you do is go to your supermarket, you choose the product you want to know more info about, and you just scan the barcode. And what that does is it will give you a rating, and that rating is based on the parent company, not the product or the brand, but the parent company's commitment to using certified sustainable palm oil. So it gives you it's sort of like a traffic light system almost. It'll give you one of 4 different colours that range from green to red. So green is excellent, yellow is good, orange is poor, and red is no commitment. And that's based on quite a robust scoring system that is all based around the company's use of certified sustainable palm oil.
What real difference can New Zealanders make by using this app, Amy?
So until now, there hasn't really been a way for us as consumers to really have an impact on the palm oil industry and to increase the uptake of certified sustainable palm oil, particularly in New Zealand and Australia, because the labelling of palm oil isn't mandatory. It doesn't have to be made clear. And the problem with palm oil is that it can be labelled as one of a number of different things. So whether it's the pure palm oil itself, or it could be labelled as vegetable oil, or there's literally hundreds of derivatives. And that's because palm oil is so versatile and has so many uses. And so there's no real way to know if you're supporting a company that is committed to doing the right thing. And so what the app does is it allows you to, as a consumer, to congratulate and support the companies that are committed to sourcing and helping to transform that palm oil industry with certified sustainable palm oil, or it can also help us as consumers to encourage those companies who are still on that journey.
How do New Zealand companies rate when it comes to palm oil?
Yeah, so widely. The good thing about the app is that it does allow you to kind of search, if you wanted, I don't know, say peanut butter, for example, you could just type that in the keyword search and it'll come up with all the peanut butters from all the different manufacturers who are in the database and all their different ratings. And so it just allows us as Kiwis to support those companies who are doing well, and a lot of them are doing really well. We have a lot of companies that are rated excellent or green. At Auckland Zoo, we have committed to only selling products and sourcing products that will be rated good or excellent. And so we're encouraging our communities to do the same thing. So there's potential to have a huge impact on our New Zealand companies, but also on the multinational companies as well. There's a huge number of multinational companies in the database as well as New Zealand companies.
Amy Robbins there from Auckland University. It's 12 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. A Kiwi couple based in Costa Rica is raffling off what they say is a life less ordinary. Ecotourism operators Jane and Fraser Tyrrell are offering up the business they've run for 16 years in the Central American country, along with equipment and a chunk of cash to keep it running. The cost of a ticket is $81. To explain how it works, here's owner of Costa Rica Rios, Jane and Fraser Tyrrell.
So we own an adventure tour operation in Costa Rica. It includes, basically it's our adventure company is the prize. So the company's been around since 1995 and we bought it in 2007. And it has, we have a piece of land, we have 2 pieces of land in the town of Turrialba in Costa Rica. One of them is a central town piece of land that essentially has a small house or what we use as our offices. And the other piece is a piece of rainforest where we have our warehouse. And in that we have all the gear to run the trips. So we have whitewater rafts, kayaks, canoes, mountain biking, harness gear, climbing gear, all the safety gear, things like chili bins. And then there's a 4-wheel drive truck as well because we drive in and out of the jungle. And a trailer, and then all the forward bookings, the deposits for those that we get people to pay deposits, and then they pay their balance about a month before arrival. So any forward bookings, and then also a nice cash injection to make sure that the company sustains.
So a ticket is $81. Do you have to sell a certain amount of tickets?
Yeah, we have to sell in the thousands, I'd say, before we actually give it away. But we've not actually come up with a number in our head yet. But if we hit it, I guess we'll know what that number is.
And is there a risk that you'll walk away with not very much?
Well, the way it works is it's quite clever. If we don't hit a number that we feel the company's worth. The platform we're using as a raffle will still draw a name out of the hat, and instead of winning the business, they'll win whatever cash has been...
whatever the ticket sales. So say we sell, I don't know, $500,000 worth of tickets, the winner will get 75% of that, and the hosting platform will get 25%.
That's right.
And we'll actually get nothing, but we still retain our company, so we don't effectively lose.
How about the fine print? Is there any?
Not really. It's pretty guaranteed. By using this third-party website, they guarantee the funds, they hold the funds, they do the random selection. So we really don't have any control over that. Really, because it's a third-party site, employees, friends, family could buy tickets if they wanted, but we're really hoping the tickets will be bought by people who are dreaming of a life less ordinary, a life somewhere different. They want to go to Costa Rica and try living there.
That was us.
A bit like we were.
Yeah.
We want some sort of dreaming, adventurous person or couple or family.
You've been in Costa Rica for 16 years. Why do you want to leave now?
That's a good question.
Yeah, our kids are getting a bit older, so we feel like they're needing other opportunities. We are also thinking, okay, what's our next plan? What's our retirement options? Obviously, we're not quite ready to retire yet. But yeah, we're really looking at what's our next adventure before we get too old to do too many adventures, really.
Yeah, we feel we've got one last big adventure somewhere in us, and we hope to maybe sail around the world. We're hoping maybe the sale of our company can help finance that.
What do you say to people who think there's got to be a catch? How can you assure people it's not just a big white elephant?
I mean, it maybe sounds too good to be true, but there's no catch whatsoever. I mean, if we sell enough tickets, somebody out there is going to win an unbelievable company for the sake of $80. It's an absolute life changer, potentially, for somebody.
Jane and Fraser Tyrrell in Costa Rica, and you can check out that adventure touring company on our website. The images are amazing, particularly the Flying Fox. Right, Evie?
Oh, yeah.
As the cost of living bites, people aren't taking in as many furry companions as they used to. And as kennels fill up, greyhounds whose racing days are over aren't being adopted. Libby Kirby-McLeod went to meet some of the retired speedsters in need of a home.
This lovely handsome boy is Nate. He will be at the Greyhound Adoption Day. Good boy, Nate. And he is cat trainable, a rare cat trainable dog.
Kennel manager Caroline Henley is introducing me to some of the greyhounds currently in her care. When a dog in Waikato retires from racing, it comes to Caroline, who learns about each animal to figure out what sort of household would suit it. She says she's never had so many dogs waiting for a home.
I think it had a lot to do with COVID and how COVID's affected the country, and it's very expensive, to have your family and then adopt a dog and, consider what it's going to cost you.
Greyhounds as Pets, or GAP, works to rehome greys once they are retired. Adoption coordinator Dawn Glover says across the world, domestic animals are having a tough time finding a home.
Across all the different agencies that rehome domestic pets, there has been a slowdown in adoptions. For instance, it's been recorded in the UK that there's 4 times the number of bulldog cross dogs, not greyhounds obviously, waiting in rehoming kennels.
Dawn says they are seeing an increase in people who have adopted a dog but can no longer afford to keep them.
In the last 3 months, our return rate has been 30% of our adoption actions, or 49% of our adoptions, so that's 17 returns. Of those returns, 6 were over 2 years in their homes before they were returned to us, and those returns were listed as changes in circumstance.
Lewis Nichols is a dog trainer for Think Dog. He says people do need to know that they can afford vet bills, animal insurance, dog training and food before committing to an animal. However, dogs don't need fancy toys or expensive bedding to be happy.
For a lot of the time, it's not necessarily the toy itself, it's what you do with the toy that makes it fun. So a toy that's just lying around just being dead, basically. It's no fun, but then if you get an old tea-towel out and whip it around and they get to chase it, then that becomes the best toy ever.
Lewis says people need realistic expectations when bringing home a dog, especially a greyhound or other retired working dog that doesn't know what it is to be a pet. GAP is running a pet adoption day on Saturday the 18th of November in Auckland to give people an opportunity to meet some of the dogs currently waiting in Caroline Henley's kennels.
This little cutie is Zeus. He will be at the adoption day and he is all good to go, the most playful, happy little soul who would just love a family.
Dawn Glover says after falling in love with the breed as a 10-year-old, the first greyhound she adopted, Henry, was a dream come true.
Got home and opened the door, and he just went straight into the house, straight to his bed, laid on it, crossed his little paws, and looked at me and smiled. And I was like, oh my God, he's been so easy. He's been the most perfectly fulfilled dream that I've ever had.
She now has 2 adopted hounds and is fostering another. And unsurprisingly, Dawn thinks a greyhound might be perfect for you too.
A Christchurch primary school is trying to make the start of the school week more like a party rather than a chore in an attempt to boost school attendance. School attendance rates are down across the country, so Christchurch's Shirley Primary School is trying something a bit different to encourage kids through the school gates. Rachel Graham went along to join the fun.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's a Monday. It's an awesome day to be at school. Come on in.
For students at Shirley Primary School, Monday mornings aren't just your usual boring start to the school day. Since the beginning of this term, the school and community group the Shirley Village Project have been injecting some pizzazz into the start of school. They set up speakers blasting music, balloon decorations, an upbeat welcome crew, free stickers and special guests such as police and sports teams. This morning, the students walking through the school gate say the scheme is working.
It's really fun to come back to school. I've seen these football players, okay? Yeah, it's from clubs and ambulance. We're gonna have a big thing, and when we fill up a bucket, and if we get up to 300 kids, we can dunk a teacher with water.
Which teacher do you reckon?
Miss Fifield, my teacher.
Parent and helper Natasha Muta thinks it's an awesome idea.
We all know how hard it is to come into work or school on a Monday after the weekend, and it makes the kids so happy seeing us at the gate and welcoming them in. Yeah, I love it.
Principal Alistair Sims says, like many schools around the country, Shirley Primary hasn't had consistently good attendance, and so they are trying to combat that by adding some excitement into arriving at school.
So we know that attendance is a fairly big thing that has been worked on, by all schools across New Zealand. We have tried the sort of more punitive sort of approach of attendance services, those sort of things, and that for us wasn't really very successful.
Steve Jones-Paul from the Shirley Village Project says there are huge benefits from children attending school as often as they can, and not just for the children.
Kids coming to school should be celebrated. It's an awesome thing that them and their parents are doing, and attendance isn't just a school or Ministry of Ed issue or a parent issue, it's a community issue. So what can we as a community do to come and help them make it an awesome place to be? And so this is what we do, we come and celebrate.
To add to the excitement, Steve has also built a dunking machine.
The dunking machine, it was a little idea we had was that, well, if we're getting kids coming along, what about we set a target? So we've set a target, and if there's enough kids at school in the morning, the class with the most kids at school that morning get to choose a teacher to dunk at lunchtime. Yeah. So
how do the teachers feel about this?
Well, I believe there's a list of volunteers.
Oh,
so.
Really? For now, the children are using the time before class to practice their skills at hitting the dunking machine target. Getting ready for the day they finally get to dunk a teacher.
Dunking a teacher, well done, very
Always
quick.
a crowd pleaser.
Always a crowd pleaser. Thanks so much for your feedback. We'll do some after the news.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening. Pō Mārie ko Evie Ashton tēnei. With government talks into their second week, National's plan to fund tax cuts through a tax on foreign house purchases is proving to be a major sticking point. While talks are progressing, there are no signs a deal is close. Here's our political editor, Jane Patterson.
New Zealand First voted for the foreign buyers ban while in coalition with Labour and is flatly opposed to partially rolling it back. That's a problem for National, which plans to fund its tax cuts with the billions of dollars raised from a tax on foreign purchases over $2 million. It's looking increasingly unlikely a deal will be struck in time for incoming Prime Minister and National leader Chris Luxon to attend APEC. That leaves it to the caretaker government. Still, technically, Prime Minister Chris Hipkins is one option. Another is Damien O'Connor, already in San Francisco for trade talks.
The head of the country's biggest bank, ANZ, says its net profit of just over $2 billion is a fair one. The $2.1 billion profit for the year ended September is down 7%. Chief Executive Antonia Watson has told Checkpoint that is still a big number, which customers struggling to pay their mortgages might find hard to understand.
It's our return on equity. So our shareholders have invested $17 billion in New Zealand, and they need to get enough of a return on that they'll keep their money invested so that we can lend it out to our customers. We're pretty comfortable that, we make a fair profit. It's enough to make our shareholders continue to invest in New Zealand, but it's not excessive.
Antonia Watson says the return is middle of the road for the banking industry. A 30-year-old man has appeared in Auckland District Court after a 9-year-old child was hit over the head with a shovel at the end of a pro-Palestinian rally. Acting Superintendent Sunny Patel says the accused faced 2 charges, wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm with a weapon and intent to injure with a weapon. Sally
The
Wenley
9-year-old
reports.
boy is in Starship Hospital in a stable condition following yesterday's attack. Mr Patel says the assault happened behind the town hall as crowds were leaving following demonstrations in the city and was not politically motivated. He says the man is under mental health supervision. Organisers of the pro-Palestine rally say they are deeply saddened that a young boy was injured and are supporting the family. 3 other people who were arrested at the protest have not been charged.
A specialised ambulance officer has told a court that the scene at Christchurch's Linwood Mosque felt unsafe for paramedics to be allowed in. The inquest into the 2019 mosque attacks continued today in Christchurch in front of Deputy Chief Coroner Bridget Windley. Dale Morla, who is a specialised emergency paramedic, was at Linwood on March the 15th. This afternoon, Mr Morla told the inquest the scene felt risky for general ambulance staff. He said general ambulance staff are more vulnerable than police and specialised ambulance officers. The World Health Organization says the situation at the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza is dire and perilous. Israel denies Gaza's largest hospital has lost power, but says it's helping to evacuate babies from the facility. Our correspondent, William Denslow, reports from the UN headquarters in New York.
In a social media post, the WHO chief Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said medical facilities in Gaza have transformed into scenes of death and despair. He said the Palestinian enclave's largest hospital has been without electricity for 3 days, and bombings around the site are exacerbating the situation. Israeli officials deny striking Gaza's largest hospital and blame Hamas for the loss of civilian life.
Waka Kotahi says a new bridge will be assembled like a giant Meccano set to allow State Highway 25A on the Coromandel to reopen ahead of schedule. The road, which connects the 2 sides of the Coromandel Peninsula, has been closed since storms in January caused a massive slip. The section is set to reopen 5 days before Christmas, 3 months ahead of schedule. Joe Wilson from Waka Kotahi told Checkpoint they sped up the process of bridging the slip by focusing on the most important thing that needed to be done.
And that was basically building as much as we could at the same time off-site, so that when we brought it to site it was like a giant Meccano set and literally you're just assembling it.
The road is due to open on December the 20th. 7 teenagers have been arrested after an aggravated robbery in the southern Auckland town of Pukekohe. Police say 6 masked offenders, 2 armed with weapons, stole items including cigarettes from a business on West Street this morning. A 7th person drove the robbers to the business in a stolen vehicle, which was later recovered with most of the stolen items inside. Police say charges being considered include aggravated robbery. And a Christchurch primary school is trying to create a party atmosphere to kick off Monday mornings in a bid to beat the countrywide trend of low school attendance. Ministry of Education figures show only 47% of students came to school regularly in Term 2 this year. Steve Jones-Poole from community group The Shirley Village Project has helped set up the Monday morning festivities during Term 4 at Shirley Primary.
Every Monday, or the first day of the week, because some of them are Tuesdays, we turn up and we put up our balloons and our music, and we just celebrate the kids and the parents coming to school. Make it an awesome place to be on a Monday morning.
Steve Jones-Poole says it benefits the whole community if children go to school as often as they can. He says children and parents have been providing positive feedback. That's the news.
Pacific Waves.
Bringing Kiribati back into the forum.
Diving into the big stories of the region.
They are an instrument of the Constitution of Fiji.
And shining a light on issues affecting Pacific peoples in Aotearoa and around the world.
Being able to go out into different places and areas that share special connections with our community was really special.
We tala noa to Pacific leaders, newsmakers, experts and commentators, and bring you up-to-date coverage from our dedicated ANZ Pacific team and talented correspondents on the ground in the region. Pacific Waves at 8:15 weeknights on RNZ National.
You are back on Checkpoint next with Susana Leatawa. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Tuesday. Northland to Taranaki, also Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and Taupo. Mainly fine today with a few cloudy areas in the west and the odd afternoon shower in Northland. Cloud increasing tomorrow with isolated showers turning to rain for a time in the afternoon or evening. Gisborne to Wairarapa, fine, high cloud increasing tomorrow. For Whanganui and from Taihape to Wellington, partly cloudy. A few showers tomorrow afternoon or evening. Nelson and Marlborough, mainly fine today, scattered rain tomorrow, clearing in the evening. Buller to Fiordland, cloudy with periods of rain, heavy at times. For Canterbury, fine with high cloud. Otago and Southland. Occasional rain or showers today with possible thunderstorms about eastern Otago. Clearing overnight. Fine spells at first tomorrow, but rain spreading north in the afternoon and evening. And for Rekohu, Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. The time is coming up to 8 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Kia ora, Evie. No mai hoki mai officials are working around the clock to evacuate 9 New Zealanders who remain in Gaza tonight. 11 Kiwis and their families were able to get out of the enclave overnight and are currently being supported by the New Zealand Embassy in Cairo. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade says it's working with New Zealand Defence Force to help those still in the region and is also urging all New Zealanders to register on the Safe Travel website. Meanwhile, hospitals in Gaza continue to come under relentless bombardment as the Israel-Hamas war rages on. Hospital staff are working in dire conditions with electricity and medical supplies either out or running low. The buildings that are still operating are packed with residents seeking shelter. Joining us now from Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, is Simon Eccles-Hall. Hi, Simon. How many hospitals are still operating in Gaza?
Well, that's a very good question. The amount of information that we're getting from our medical staff in Gaza is now sporadic. And unfortunately, it seems that there are very few hospitals still functioning. The main hospital where MSF has been providing assistance, the Al-Shifa Hospital, as you described in the introduction, has become under relentless attack over the weekend and is barely able to continue to function.
So what can you tell us about what you are hearing from your people on the ground?
We are hearing an absolutely catastrophic situation. Staff in the Al-Shifa Hospital are sharing the stories of hundreds of patients and staff being essentially trapped inside the hospital as it is under attack. Over the weekend, there were attacks which struck the outpatient department, killing patients, injuring more, and also an attack which hit the maternity ward. We've seen that there are many young children, neonatal patients at the hospital who are now in a life-threatening situation because of the lack of access to fuel to run the generators to keep life-saving emergency support going.
We have throughout the day been hearing news reports about those premature babies at Al Shifa. Do you know if they have been evacuated?
As of now, currently, no, we have no news that those children have been evacuated, and indeed there's been some concerning misinformation circulating about whether or not the hospital is functioning, who is providing that obstacle to those children to be evacuated. From MSF, we would staunchly defend the idea that any hospital in any conflict situation should never be a target. We should not be in the situation where we're having to evacuate patients, including premature babies or neonatals, who require constant medical support. They should be able to stay in the hospital. They should be able to be safe in that environment and not be a target, as we've seen over the weekend.
Do you know if the aid convoys have been able to reach Al Shifa or any other hospitals in Gaza?
To date, no. The amount of humanitarian aid that has been able to cross the Al Rafah border post from Egypt has been tiny, almost insignificant in the amount of assistance that is coming through. So as we speak, there are critical, life-threatening shortages of food, of water, of fuel to generate electricity. And for MSF in particular, we're very aware of the lack of medical supplies. Our doctors performing surgeries without the required anesthetics and other medicines to be able to provide duty of care to patients.
What can you tell us about reports we understand of snipers shooting at people as they try to leave hospitals?
Yes, one of our staff actually has made a similar statement over the weekend, saying that staff who were seeking to leave the hospital or to flee the hospital, this is the Al Shifa hospital, were witness to being shot. We understand that hundreds of patients and staff now are remaining within the hospital, too afraid to evacuate because of this experience over the weekend. So yes, MSF can also confirm that we've had similar reports from our staff in the hospital that people are being shot as they attempt to flee.
What else are you hearing from other hospitals other than Al Shifa in Gaza?
We have 300 national staff working for us in Gaza at the moment, and we've unfortunately lost contact with many of them over the weekend. It's very difficult, the telecommunications situation. But we understand that the siege around the Al Shifa hospital is also playing out in other hospitals, Children's Hospital being surrounded by IDF tanks, and indiscriminate bombing continuing over the weekend, not sparing medical facilities, not sparing ambulances. So unfortunately what we're hearing is that this situation is not unique to Al Shifa Hospital, and in fact since the 7th of October with the commencement of the current hostilities, we've seen time and time again health facilities coming under attack, and that of course is something that is never justifiable. It's a violation of international humanitarian law, and it's something that should be investigated as a war crime.
Just to finish, Simon, and you've already said that hospitals shouldn't be under attack. How do you advise your staff to keep safe, or how do they tell you that they're able to keep safe?
That's a really difficult question. It's a choice that the staff are making. MSF has been unable to maintain our regular coordinated medical assistance. And despite our concerns for our staff, many of them choose to continue to turn up at the hospitals for work out of concern for their patients. But we know it's at great personal cost. We unfortunately lost one of our colleagues on the 6th of November Mohammed Al-Ahel has worked for us for a few years as a lab technician. He was killed at home when his building in the Al-Sheikh refugee camp was struck. He lost not only his life, many members of his family and more than a dozen in the building. Similarly, our staff are telling us of deaths of family members, and at this stage, we've lost contact with a number of our staff, but we're unable to verify that we've lost more than one of our staff members in the current hostilities. But it's a very, very difficult personal choice that staff are making to abandon their patients and seek to flee or to stay at great personal risk.
Thank you very much for your time today, Simon. That's Simon Eccles-Hall, who is the head of programs for Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières. Meanwhile, the daughter of the Australian who died in the October the 7th Hamas terrorist attacks in Israel has returned to the home in Israel where her mum was killed. The ABC's Alison Horn reports.
As Nicole Carboni walks into her mother's house, the floor beneath her feet is littered with clothes, books, photos and glass, the remnants of a deadly attack by Hamas that left her mother dead.
How can anybody walk inside, seeing her in the dark, sitting by herself, with the good eyes, with no hesitation, just shoot her like that? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Galit Carboni is the only Australian to have died in the October 7 massacre. She was inside her home in Kibbutz Be'eri when it was stormed by Hamas, living her last moments on the phone with her daughter.
That moment she told me, listen, they're here for me. And before she hung up, she told me, my sunshine, my beautiful daughter, I love you. I swear to God, the moment she told me that, I knew that it's about to end.
We walk into the safe room where Galit was sheltering but was unable to properly close the door. 2 bullet holes have punctured the concrete wall. Galit's blood is stained on Nicole's mattress in the spare bedroom. She says she's returned to the home for some closure, but she struggles to make sense of the horror.
The bad guys have actually killed my mom. They've been in here, my house, in my room. They killed her on my bed.
Israeli war tanks rumble past the house. They're now stationed adjacent to the community, some shooting over the top of homes into Gaza. A reminder that war rages around us.
It's 18 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. One of Australia's largest port operators says it has now resumed operations at 4 Australian ports after a major cyber attack. The attack forced DP World to shut down operations on Friday, causing freight to pile up on wharves around the country. The company says it's now tested its key systems and work has started again at ports in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Fremantle. But the incident is not over. Air Marshal Darren Goldie is the National Cybersecurity Coordinator and has been helping with the response. He told the ABC it's still unclear who's responsible.
The matter of attribution when it comes to a nation formally attributing a threat actor takes significant time, so I would not expect the Australian government to be attributing that anytime soon.
It's the latest incident in a growing list of cyber strikes on major Australian companies. Australia's Minister for Home Affairs, Claire O'Neill, says this time cyber criminals have struck a critical piece of the nation's infrastructure.
DP World is responsible for the movement of 40% of freight in and out of our country. It is essential to the functioning of our economy. What's important here is that DP World have been working with government to try to resolve this, and in ways that will make sure that this doesn't impact as much as possible on Australians.
The shutdown has caused a backlog of containers, but DP World says it expects to move as many as 5,000 of them today. The company says there could be more disruptions in the coming days as work continues to fix systems and investigate the attack. Demonstrations have taken place in cities across Spain against a plan to grant amnesties to leading Catalan separatists in exchange for supporting a new term for the socialist-led government. Tens of thousands gathered in Madrid for the biggest protest, called by the centre-right People's Party. The BBC's Danny Eberhard reports.
Por nuestra Constitución, no a la amnistía.
For our Constitution, no to the amnesty, yes to Spain. Long live Spain. Madrid's regional head, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, set the tone. A huge crowd of people, many waving the red and yellow of Spain's national flag, had packed the city's Puerta del Sol, the place symbolically that marks the heart of the country. But there were protests elsewhere too, including in the Catalan capital, Barcelona. The demonstrators' ire was directed in part at acting Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez. Posters labelled him a traitor for a deal they believe undermines the unity of Spain and the rule of law. Protesters demanded jail for both him and for Carles Puigdemont, the man who led a failed bid for Catalan independence in 2017. He's currently in exile in Belgium, but stands to benefit from the proposed amnesty. The leader of the People's Party, Alberto Núñez Feijóo, denounced the deal.
Spain is going to have a prime minister who's bought his investiture in exchange for the impunity of his associates, paid for by the taxes of the Spanish people. This is what's happening in Spain. Nothing more, nothing less.
The socialists hope the deal will secure stable governance over a 4-year term, avoiding the need for new elections. They may have stitched together enough votes in Parliament for Mr Sánchez to win an investiture vote, expected later this week. But it's come at the cost of renewed polarisation.
There's trouble on the Thai holiday island of Phuket, as an influx of Russians buying property and setting up their own businesses is causing tension with locals. Hundreds of thousands of Russians have left their home country since the invasion of Ukraine. The ABC's Lauren Day reports.
This is the best unit we currently have available for sale. It offers a wonderful view, wonderful mountain view.
Russian real estate agent Kristina Kamisheva is giving an enthusiastic tour of a pretty average condominium near Phuket's Bangtao beach.
And right now we are in the main living area where you can sleep, look at yourself in a big mirror, right? Sometimes it's also so important. Then we have a TV.
With its white sand and warm water, it's not exactly a hard sell, and there's one particular type of buyer driving the boom.
Russians love Phuket because Phuket is a very nice place to live and spend your holiday.
Almost 500,000 Russians arrived in Phuket between January and July this year, and about 10,000 of them decided to stay long-term, in part because of the war in Ukraine. Russians are now the #1 foreign buyer in Phuket and account for up to 60% of condominium sales to foreigners. And that's contributed to price rises of up to 15 to 20% in some parts of the island.
Locals are so happy with Russian tourists coming here.
You don't think there's any tension?
No.
But some locals say they're not benefiting from the boom, like Patong guest house owner Sakon.
Russian people run their own hotels. They provide car rental services and tour packages for customers, so they don't have to find those by themselves.
Many believe Russians are working illegally in the country, but rather than cracking down on illegal work, the opposition Move Forward party is pushing for the new government to give them more rights to work legally. Phuket MP Titikan wants an overhaul of the country's immigration laws.
Because now when they are illegal work, they cannot hire Thai people or local residents, and they not pay tax, and maybe they bribe the police officer.
He says his constituents have nothing against Russians, but they want to reap the benefits of the influx.
Thai people, they welcome foreigners to stay, to live together in Thailand. But we need everyone to comply the law.
Kristina Kamisheva is expecting another wave of Russians soon, and she hopes some of them will stay long term.
Winter is coming, and we expect a bigger amount of tourists coming here because Russians don't want to be first.
A lion that was spotted walking through La Dispoli west of Rome has been captured and returned to the circus it escaped from. Videos posted on social media show locals shocked at seeing the big cat with an impressive mane casually roaming the streets of the seaside town. The lion was caught more than 5 hours after the initial alert was raised. Sofia Betizza from the BBC reports.
Mamma mia, Madonna Santa.
Last night, panic and astonishment in this Italian town as a lion escaped from a local circus. The animal, known as Kimba, was spotted by several people casually wandering the streets. The seaside town of La Dispoli, north of Rome, was placed on lockdown alert, the mayor warning its 40,000 residents to stay at home. The search was not easy. This footage, taken from a police helicopter, shows how tricky it was to spot the lion at nightfall. He was able to get away multiple times. But after 7 hours on Saturday night, the authorities finally captured and sedated Kimba. An investigation has been opened into how exactly this adult lion was able to escape from his cage. But the good news is that Kimba didn't hurt anybody and is doing well.
He's doing well. Well, for hundreds of years, a mystery has drawn thousands of amateur sleuths, tourists and scientists to a famously deep pool of water in Scotland. Is there a monster that lives in Loch Ness? The hunt intensified 90 years ago today when the first photo was taken, allegedly showing a beast emerging from the water. The BBC's Madeline Drury has more.
Here is the most unusual film of recent years, for it proves the existence of a monster in Loch Ness.
The 1930s saw a fever spread in the search to find the Loch Ness Monster, or Nessie. No longer simply a local legend that dated back to sightings from the Middle Ages, a photo, seen as undeniable proof for many at the time, captured the imagination of the world. It was a cold November day in 1933 when Hugh Gray set out on his usual walk after church. He told the Scottish Daily Record that he had noticed
an object of considerable dimensions
emerging about a metre out of the water not far from him. The photo he claims to have taken shows a dark outline. It resembles a snake or an eel, but the grainy quality and black and white image generally looks a bit like a smudge on the camera lens. Police were worried by public interest at the time, which saw people bringing weapons to the loch to kill the monster. But the government was not so convinced and said it was outside their jurisdiction to investigate the matters. Theories have been circulating ever since.
Got any legs?
Of course not. It has. There have been several rather expensive investigations to find evidence. In 1987, scientist Adrian Shine cobbled together over $1 million worth of equipment and sponsorship for Operation Deep Scan, widely seen as the most comprehensive search.
It was, in essence, extremely simple. A sonar curtain moving from one end of the loch to the other. We had this vast number of vessels, 20-odd in the front line, but it also had the smell of decision about it.
But there has never been any conclusive evidence she exists. Perhaps the most famous photograph claiming to be the Loch Ness Monster was published a year after Hugh Gray's photo was taken. It shows Nessie's trademark long neck popping out of the water and was revealed to be a hoax in the 1990s when a man admitted to being involved in staging the photo. They used a toy submarine with a fake neck attached. Some estimates suggest the mystery still brings $50 million to the Scottish economy each year. So with over 1,000 official sightings and counting, for many believers, the search continues.
And on and on and on it goes. Thank you so much for all of your feedback regarding State Highway 25A. Opening before Christmas, I'll be able to go to Thames for the day. That's from Diane. Good effort. Shows things can be done if you pull finger. Hopefully the trend continues. Well, that's it from us. The late news team will keep you updated throughout the night. And if you missed anything from the show, you can find Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. First up, heads from 5 in the morning to the beautiful Coromandel coastal town of Tairua and gets reaction from residents relieved to see State Highway 25A reopening before Christmas. Kia pai tōpō.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening, tēnā tātou. I'm Evie Ashton. The National Party's plan to fund tax cuts by a tax on foreign house purchases is proving to be a major sticking point in talks to form the next government. The head of the country's biggest bank, ANZ, says its $2.1 billion profit for the year is a fair one, although she understands customers struggling to pay their mortgages might not agree. Waka Kotahi says a bridge across a slip on State Highway 25A in the Coromandel will be assembled like a giant Meccano set to allow the road to open before Christmas.